Hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment of the Retail Media Lounge, where Osmos brings together industry leaders who are able to give us a bird's eye view on trends, everything assisting various organizations in the market from a monetization, growth, and a solutions perspective. My name is Nikhil. I drive partnership and sales at Osmos. Today, I am joined by Vivek Sharma, a partner at Deloitte, leading their consumer industry portfolio across retail, auto, CPG, and many more. And Irwin Lin, also a partner at Deloitte, driving Deloitte's digital practices across APAC. I think together, Vivek and Irwin are at this very interesting epicenter of change where they have, like I said, a bird's eye view of things that are impacting various clients and the vertical lens, but also being able to provide counsel on taking advantage of some of these trends. So, Vivek, Irwin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Thank you, Nikhil.
Vivek, so what we'll do is I will start with the questions first for you. From your lens, when you talk about the clients, the strategic organizations you work with across specifically retail, auto, CPG, a lot of these are investing heavily in touch points for their consumers, right? And this becomes, you know, an excellent audience data set. Is this something that you're noticing across, touch points, whether it's a website or an app or a custom loyalty program or even in-store and physical experience sectors? What's your take on that?
Absolutely. So I think one of the topics that we've gathered here to talk about, the entire retail media network and or commercial media network as the new term. I think the commerce media network. Sorry, I think the one of the fundamental driving forces behind these new models and new revenue streams is actually having data, a lot of first party data from so many different touch points. So absolutely that's very clear. And I think for quite a lot of time, industry always had this idea saying, hey, data monetization. Everybody is talking about it. If you recall, almost this term came almost, I think, 2010, 11. Everybody is saying, hey, we have a lot of data. We want to monetize. We have so many, millions of mobile users database, etc., etc. But then I think in the last 3-4 years, uh, you could actually see the data monetization at scale. And I think one of the components of the data monetization, monetization is actually the media monetization, right? And as I said, which leads to things like retail media network or commerce media network, and God knows what is going to evolve in future. But absolutely, what you said, we see that all the time.
Arvind, so this then when Vivek actually points out these trends from a from the strategic organization he works with, right? I think the next extension of this question is, yes, I have such rich data. So what next? And I'm assuming that question gets posed, Irwin, to you a lot.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the genesis and then how this whole uh, segment of how people want to monetize it and how we got the RMN. I mean, Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia is definitely slower in adoption. I think today we're at a very exciting time where there is a lot of interest in retail media network. There is investment going to retail media network. And I think a couple of questions will keep coming up, right? And there'll be retailers and clients asking us that, hey, we have the data. Um, what about firstly the technology? What do we need? How do we get that going? And my answer to that at this point in time is that, look, today, even compared to say 5 years ago, where if you were to do something in retail media network, you probably had to roll up your sleeves and build a lot of things yourself. But today, where we're at, and then the Osmos is a great example, right? The technology has converged, right? The technology has matured to a point where it is very accessible to get started. which then very quickly leads us to the next question that they'll ask. Okay, but I have the data. Okay, the technology is there. Are we ready? How do we do this? And this is where the questions around the talent that I have, the business model that I need, the processes that I need. How do I bring the organization together to actually drive this to start coming up? So I think clients are asking the right questions. And interestingly, they don't necessarily, as much as they look at, hey, let's look at, tell me more about Amazon. How have they done it? Tell me more about Walmart. How have they done it in the US? They don't necessarily, and I think they're quite sophisticated about it. They don't necessarily go, okay, we have to do what they do, because they say, hey, look, the context is different, the market is different, my business is different, the scale is different. So we need to do it differently, right? So I think that's where we're at today. Those are the kinds of conversations we're having. And then, like I said, I think it's very exciting times for us here in Asia.
Vivek, while retail media, I think the term has become a little more real over the last 5, 7 years. Like you said, it started with, hey, I have data 15 years ago and look where we are now. But outside of retail, like you mentioned, commerce media as well, right? In your expertise, uh, this model should apply for to an airline. It can apply for like an airport authority. It could apply for auto travel. Do you see that? Do you see this model in principle applied broader than retail?
No, no, absolutely. So I think that's a good segue into what Irwin said earlier, right? We were talking about, you know, maturity of Southeast Asia versus some of the developed markets, especially US, because I think when you talk about retail media network, the first name that comes to your mind is Amazon, right? Now, if you look at the mature market, there are big shifts happening. All along, I think you would have seen, you being there, Osmos, and you guys know it, we are at the forefront, that CPGs were the biggest advertisers on the retail media. Now, that is changing, right? So you'll see new sectors emerging in, right? So you'll see electronics now is, has is becoming quite, big on that, right? Even financial services, or, or also airlines. Um, I also saw, some of the medical services. So these are also now trying to leverage. So this is on the advertiser side. Now, in terms of the where the commerce media, obviously today the maximum traction is on retail media, but it's not limited to retail media. If you look at the growth markets, there are, the developed markets, there are many examples. So, Uber, Grab at our, in our home, right? So you have now the United Airlines has some amazing examples. I'm sure you would have heard of it, right? They have already started serving personalized content on their in-flight entertainment systems now, right, etc. So so they're their example, right? Even Uber, I think they've tied with another I think the commerce media company, where they're actually now giving personalized content on their TV in terms of the restaurant recommendation where you're dropping. So I think there's a big shift happening in the developed markets. To answer your question, I think in summary, yes, retail media is still, while Southeast Asia is still to have the retail media network at scale. But I think sometimes what I have seen is that it earlier it used to be innovation driven west into Asia. Now I see a lot of innovation driven by Asia out, right, etc. So who knows, 3 4 years down the line, some of these additional sectors that I spoke to you about could actually be take a lion's share of the overall commerce media, right, at the same time as it's happening in US, right? Because Grab is a great example, right? They've already started, right? So the answer, Nikhil, is yes, it's big. Retail media is big. CPG is still the biggest advertisers, but others are catching up quite a bit.
Uh, just quickly add to that. My view, and I think retail media and commerce media network in Asia is having that leapfrog moment, I feel, right? Because we're having so many conversations outside of retail, right? In non-traditional, you have downstream fuel retail, we have telcos talking, having the conversations, like you said, airport authorities and airports. And I feel like clients here are excited about it across the different sectors. And I wouldn't be surprised that the first client that we see at scale doing this might not be in retail. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that'd be a really pleasant surprise, Irwin. But coming back to the way Deloitte approaches it. So there is an opportunity, there is a statement, and the question comes as to how. But Irwin, in your point of view, like a scalable tech-enabled model, like in practice, it's not something, even if the platform is ready to go in a 3-week, 4-week period, it's still a journey for a lot of these clients. So how do you actually build that model out for them?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with that question, Nikhil, actually. I mean, if we just start with the obvious one, right? Like, let's start with what everyone will be thinking and asking. Okay, what tech do I need? Yeah, to try to monetize this. Um, and I think starting from there, what we try to do always to look beyond the obvious. Yes, everyone knows, and we'll talk about. Yeah, okay, we need data personalization. It has to be cloud, AI analytics. I think everyone gets that, right? And but I think to be really successful, for us as a starting point, we need to think about the technology and the capabilities in a different way. Um, so for example, typically with RMN, you think about, okay, what data and hence what kind of segments and audience that opens up for me, and then on the flip side, what's the inventory that I get, right? That I can actually monetize to it, and how do I put that together, right? So the tech essentially needs to serve that, yeah, for that purpose. Now, if you think about it, with Gen AI, it actually starts to open up even more beyond those, right? Because it starts to think about, hey, going beyond ad inventories, can I actually start to provide services within my RMM strategy in the creative and content services that can be monetized as well? Because Gen AI, one thing that it does really well is the democratizes creativity, right? Essentially what it does. So imagine today you're not just monetizing attention and inventory, but creativity as well. So I think those are things that we are in a very interesting state of there's many things happening in this industry of technology. And I would challenge clients to think that way. Yeah. The second point I would have is that I guess it's not so much about the availability of the different capabilities, right? But also, how would you, and these are conversations that we have with clients, how do you want and how would you integrate your RMN into your value chain to drive monetization? Because I think the worst thing that can happen is that, hey, I have some space here that I can put a banner at. I have this space in the store that I can put another banner and poster, and then let's try to monetize that, right? I think that's the worst thing that you can do if you think that that's what RMN is. So getting that mix right, online, offline, onsite, offsite, to work together to orchestrate that, I think is really key. And it goes back to what is that value chain, and hence conversely, what is that customer experience that you're going to create with this RMN that will really drive that differentiation to you versus the other media companies, right? And the other walled gardens, the Googles and Metas. What makes you stand apart? So I think those will be the key questions that I will start with to answer. Because, like I said, I come back to my first point. The basics are there. People understand that, oh, yeah, we need to do personalization, we need to do customer insights, and etc. Right? So I think we need to do differently. And I think we have the opportunity to do that. Yeah.
And Vivek, in specifically like a vertical, I mean, like retail, like hospitality, like auto, for instance, as well, there is a significant amount of investment in like in-store offline experience. And do you see that to be like a competitive advantage where then, I have a loyalty program and I'm connected and I'm being delivered personalized content, but also a lot of investment has gone from like an auto player into the experience when they come into an actual showroom. Do these also open up interesting monetization opportunities?
Yeah, Nikhil, I think it does, right? And it's already doing it, right? We have some great examples, right, which I covered earlier, right, including the Amazons and the Walmart, etc. Uh, Now, I think the key question is that Irwin said, do some of these clients that we work with across, retail, auto, airlines, don't they see it? Of course, they see it, right? So, but then there are barriers to that adaption, right? So they do realize the value of yes, there's an additional revenue stream. Now let me sort of double click a bit on retail. Now, every retailer in Southeast Asia in the last 3 to 4 years would have spoken about retail media network. It would be in their plan, etc. Right. So for sure. So to answer your question, yes, it does offer big amount of opportunities. But I think now we are in a stage where we should talk about how part, right? Why has it not resulted into a new revenue stream at scale? Now, it's no brainer for any retailer to understand that you have been operating at 2% margin historically, right? All along. And here is a new revenue stream, which could give you anywhere between 20% to 70, 80% margin, depending on offline, online, etc. So, what are some of the key barriers, right? I think one of the key barriers is it's not just a transformation in terms of what Irvin covered, right? In terms of getting your segmentation right, because you need to have a new, go to market tactics, when you are looking at retail India, not just about leveraging AI, but it's also about the operating model conversation. It's also about when you have a blue sky thinking at the top, how do you then translate into an actual working model at the middle management layer? And I think that's where there are a lot of barriers, right? So there is a people element to it, there is a change management element to it, and there's also a lot has to be done by the tech solutions itself, because today I a lot of retailers, Amazon may be a different examples, are saying, where's the impact, right? Show me the impact. How can you increase the yield, right? So, right, so right, while we all know that we can do a closed loop attribution model, we can give you the real impact, we can do predictive modeling, but are the retailers seeing it from the brands? I think that's super super important. So unless they see the real impact, unless you see the this go beyond theoretical customer experience, which means I walk in a store, and in that store there's a display which is giving me a personalized recommendation based on the inventory, based on the footfall at that point in time. That's when actually the it will be more like, okay, so they'll start believing. I think those are some of the barriers. So opportunities are galore. Is it transforming into a big retailer having sort of $1 billion from retail media? The answer is no. And I think these barriers have to be overcome both at the op model level, as Irvin covered, at the tech level, change management level. And also, I think it is a lot of responsibility, right, from the retailers or auto companies or airlines, that they should be able to measure the impact and increase that yield in a very quantifiable way, which is real on papers, which is affecting your balance sheet.
Absolutely, Vivek. And I think, Irwin, the very pointed follow up to that is like, given Deloitte's depth, these are like multi year relationships and depth and guidance and counsel that Deloitte's provided to a lot of these folks. How do you approach that people situation? Because, like Vivek said, I need to see it, but to see it, you have to be very planned. And so they will only accept that coming from somebody operating from a place of trust. So, how do you handle that people situation, Irwin, with traditional organizations in the Southeast Asia market?
Um, and look, the way we kind of work with clients on this, right, and the kind of discussions that we have is it it there's two sides to the story. Firstly, I think it's very important that anyone getting into this to understand that yes, it's about selling ads, but no, it's not about just selling ads. I think that's very important, right? When you get to retail media, you're essentially building a different set of muscles and competencies for the business. Yeah. Which means that and I've seen and I've spoken to clients when they're thinking, okay, I have a marketing team today. The marketing team today is the, traditional marketing team. They do marketing for your business. And I say, they should know how to do ads. They should know how to do retail media. Let's use them. And I think starting from this kind of, I guess, very fundamental perspective on, hey, this is a very different model, right? I mean, in the industry, we all know we call it, right? The sell side, the buy side. Now you're getting into the sell side. So you have to think differently and build a different set of muscles. And it's really about thinking about how to develop that new business model, the new operating model that Vivek talked about, um, and really understanding that buying advertising is not the same as selling advertising, right? Now, what you need to do then is from a people perspective. And I don't think there is any pushback or challenge, right? I think the success or the potential success of retail media is clear enough that retail media itself doesn't need to prove itself today, right? I think people see that it can happen, and then it makes a lot of sense. And interestingly, surprisingly, I see a lot of clients rallying behind it across the different BUs within the organization. But then where they start to ask the question is, oh, okay, do we then need to create a whole unit of business unit on retail media? Should it fall under marketing? Oh, we don't have anyone that's suitable to do this. So I think coming back to the core question about figuring out the operating model, and there's no one size fits all. Yeah, different maturities, different scale of businesses and clients. I think they will have different answers. But the first and foremost is they have to recognize that you have to be building different muscles. Yeah. Um, now, and that flows very naturally and easily, I feel, right? I don't necessarily think that there is a lot of questioning or friction within the different businesses, where at least the Asia clients that we've been working with, that their challenges with, we know we need to build something new. So how do we do that? Yeah. And from a people perspective, then I guess from a last point I would say on that is finding the talent out there. I think is a balance of finding veterans in the industry, and then let's be honest, right? RMN in this space in Asia is still new. And if you say, oh, I want a 10-year expert that has done this before, probably doesn't exist, right? So the other thing that we've been helping clients a lot with is how do you put in the right, I guess, people with the right skill sets in different areas that is required for RMN to be successful, and then assemble that into a team that can run fairly quickly, right, out of the market, and then launching something in the market and be successful.
Excellent, Irwin. I think I'll take that as the last word from you on ensuring that clients understand and appreciate that they're building a new muscle. It takes the right kind of skill set and patience to see the value. Vivek, the last question for you. What is the one piece of advice you'd give to anybody like in the verticals that, and I know this is a real time scenario because we've had this conversation one on one, but what is the one piece of advice you generally give your clients when they think about monetization?
I think the one uh, piece of advice that I'll give them is that, uh, and I think it links to the previous point, is that don't wait for a perfect answer, right? A lot of these questions keep coming up saying, hey, show me the money, starting with that. Show me the people. Where should it be housed at? Whether it should be part of the traditional advertising organization or under CMO or etc. I, now I'll draw a parallel. I'll give you the parallel out here is that we had a similar thing when the e-commerce started booming, right? Where should it be parked? Nobody knew where it should be parked. Same thing I see some with some organization as to where should the AI be parked? Should it be a separate organization? I think it's but the ones who are very successful are the ones who are saying that we'll not get all the answers today, people, change management, op model, but there should be a sense of urgency in making a start somewhere because seeing is believing and nothing succeeds like that. I think that's super, super important. And that's where you'll see the difference will emerge on the organizations which adapt and start seeing an impact faster than the ones who don't.
Wonderful. Vivek, Irwin, again, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. It's really given us insight across the region and across verticals, and your guidance in ensuring that these companies not just understand the opportunity, but are also able to act effectively is really appreciated. Thank you again, everyone. We'll see you again on the next installment of the Media Lounge.
Awesome. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Cheers.